Did you know? In the late 1950s, Australia developed its own post-war regionalist architecture, the Sydney and Melbourne regional styles. These styles acted as a response to the international style that was in heated discussion over its unfriendliness towards regional context and culture, as well as an offshoot of the regionalism being proposed by Lewis Mumford and others in the decades leading up to this point. This documentary explores the factors leading up to the creation of these styles and how they have affected Australian architecture. The lead up to the creation of these styles begins all the way back to the early 1900s when architecture was in a transitionary stage with the improvement of technology. Many new theories of architecture and thought were put forward to take advantage of these innovations and improve the lifestyle. Another movement was arising from early modernism, which was seeking functionalism. A project was created in the late 1920s, a precursor for a highly influential style that came from a coordination of the likes of Le Corbusier, Walter Gropius, and Mies van der Rohe among the other 17 architects. These avant-garde European architects set out to create a modernist housing estate called the Weissenhof Estate that included innovative solutions for modern living. From this project, a group of architects had started conversing, and the Congrès International d'Architecture Moderne, 1928 to 1956 arose. This organization created the minimum subsistence dwelling guide through which many of their modernist approaches were spread across the world. The buildings that were built following this guide were then coined as the International Style in 1932 by Henry Russell Hitchcock and Philip Johnson. The reactions to the buildings following the International Style were not very positive, as the public and residents saw it as not culturally friendly and as a lifestyle that didn't match the current time. So some architects and philosophers saw the International Style as a failure. Given architecture is a regional phenomenon by definition, as it has to consider the site, available building technologies, materials, and climate. This failure within the international style was a magnifying glass showing the importance of regionalism. One of the first to pay attention to this lack of regionalism was American philosopher and historian Lewis Mumford. He had discussed regionalism and the importance of including local culture in the 1930s, but only began gaining recognition and traction within the 1940s. His interpretation of regionalism stems from a couple of points. One is the idea of regionalism being a negotiation between local and global. Another is adapting the environment and reconstituting architecture to fit cultural and contextual values. All these points stem from his idea that the style of architecture is only legitimately international when it adopts regional modifications. Preceding these theories in the year 1948, a symposium was held at the Museum of Modern Art on what is happening to modern architecture. What was meant to be a meeting to find a solution for the current state of architecture merely turned into a debate among many schools of thought with different generations of architects, both modern and post-war. The meeting ended without a solution suggested. However, through this meeting, the diverse and conflicting thoughts on architecture became clear to see and generated many questions to solve, such as Mumford's suggestion to fix the international style. These arguments and questions raised, among other factors, led to the creation of both the Sydney and Melbourne regional styles in Australia as its own response to the international style, with a focus on organic versus whitewashed and manicured. Both styles were influenced by Mumford's idea of reconstituting architecture based on cultural values, to define a unique identity as well as improve housing quality for Australians. In the case of the Sydney regional style, it originated from a small group of nonconformist architects that is believed to have developed in the bushland region north of Port Jackson. The group of architects that are connected to its founding include the likes of Ian McKay, Peter Muller, Ken Woolley, Bruce Ricard, and Michael Dysart, among others. These architects mainly began by using their own houses as tests for a style that broke away from the colonial British culture that these architects saw as not fitting both the Australian society, culture, and climate. But with limited inspiration from local projects, the architects looked at outside styles such as brutalism, art and crafts, and organic architecture. An example of this would be Bruce Ricard's family houses, which brought in some of Frank Lloyd Wright's mellow colors and short protection boundaries that embraced the natural Australian landscape. Part of the connection between architects that ran through most projects first established was the use of embedding homes into the natural hillside slopes and terracing onto bushland or over it. Another key point that the architects developed over time was the use of natural materials that responded to environmental and social needs at the time to lower costs. These natural materials such as clinker bricks and stained timber added a natural tone that helped create a locality to place. And through this use of natural materials, the Sydney regional style got its distinct name as the nuts and berry style. The Melbourne regional style, on the other hand, was mainly pushed by Robin Boyd through his review of Victorian architecture. Through this review, he suggested a style that could merge the concepts of responding to local surroundings and the modernist international style. He gave credit for the beginning of the Melbourne regional style to Roy Grounds, who had created some suburban bush houses in the 1930s. The style had some key characteristics in the gable roof and wide eaves, exposed rafters, and timber mullions. Most houses were generally brick, and as time progressed, the eave became overhanging and flat roofs became more common. A common sight among the houses was the influence of the international style's lack of ornamentation, resulting in wide platforms. A good place to see these two styles, the Sydney and Melbourne regional, not only mix but also clashes in Canberra. Given that Canberra was established as a new city and was set to be Australia's capital, a mass movement occurred of academics and public servants who were moving there for their jobs or government work. And with this movement came architects of both styles that could satisfy these new Canberrans who sought the architecture from where they were originally from. This was further amplified when the National Capital Development Commission, or NCDC, for short sought out architects to design a wide range of projects from housing to schools. This left a wide range of projects that showcased these styles within Canberra, such as the Swinger Hill Cluster housing, as an example of the Sydney regional style use of the hill slope and materiality, or the Woden Special housing for the use of the Melbourne style's large overhanging eaves, exposure structure, and low roofline horizontal plan. The architecture created from these two styles stands as a testament to how the conflict within the global architecture community over the international style and regional response acted as a catalyst for the Australian architecture palette to grow. With these styles acting as exemplars for Australia's architecture, they give insight into design principles still relevant till this day. If you want to learn more about any of these subjects or topics, check out some of these references that give greater insight into the architect's thoughts.